experts cleaned up this 1887 portrait. What they saw in the background left them speechless. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had restored thousands of photographs during her 20-year career at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, but the project that arrived in March 2024 seemed routine. A Charleston family had donated their collection of 19th century portraits for digitization and preservation, standard work for the Conservation Lab. The photograph in question showed a young white man, approximately 16 years old, standing formally before a painted studio backdrop. He wore a dark suit with a high collar, his light brown hair neatly combed, his expression serious but not stern. The brass plate on the ornate frame read, Daniel Fletcher, 1887. Elena positioned the photograph under the high-resolution scanner, a machine capable of capturing details invisible to the naked eye. The image was badly deteriorated. Water damage had created dark stains across the background, and over a century of exposure had faded portions of the print to pale brown. As the scanner's light moved across the surface, Elena noticed something odd on her monitor. In the background, partially obscured by what appeared to be a studio curtain, there were irregular shapes, shadows that seemed too structured to be random damage or artifacts. She adjusted the contrast and brightness settings, enhancing different layers of the image. The shapes became clearer. What she'd assumed was deterioration might actually be intentional elements of the photograph, hidden by time and damage. Elena called over her colleague, Marcus Thompson, who specialized in 19th century photographic techniques. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the monitor. "Behind the curtain on the left side. Does that look like damage to you or something else?" Marcus leaned closer, squinting at the screen. "That's not water damage. That's single quotes fabric. Clothing maybe. And look there, is that part of a face?" Elena's heart began to race. She'd seen this before in Victorian photographs. Sometimes photographers would include servants or assistants in the background, usually positioned to be barely visible, acknowledging their presence without giving them equal prominence. But this felt different. This felt deliberately hidden. "We need to run a full spectral analysis," Elena said. "I want to see what's really in this photograph." For 3 days, Elena and Marcus worked on the photograph using every tool available in the Conservation Lab. They employed infrared imaging to see beneath surface layers, ultraviolet light to reveal faded details, and advanced digital enhancement software that could reconstruct deteriorated portions of the image based on remaining data. The results were staggering. Behind the studio curtain, positioned at approximately a 45-degree angle to Daniel Fletcher, stood another young man approximately the same age, dressed in simple but clean clothing, dark trousers, a light-colored shirt, suspenders. His skin was darker, unmistakably African American. His posture was straight, dignified, and he looked directly at the camera with an expression that mixed defiance and quiet strength. "My God," Marcus whispered. He was there the whole time, hidden in plain sight for 137 years. Elena photographed the enhanced image from multiple angles, documenting their discovery. This wasn't accidental positioning. Look at how he's standing. He's not skulking in shadows or trying to hide. He's posed just like Daniel. The photographer deliberately placed him partially behind that curtain. They examined the studio setup more carefully. The curtain was a common prop in 19th century portrait studios, used to add visual interest and depth. But in this case, it served another purpose: creating plausible deniability. Someone looking at the photograph casually would see only Daniel, but anyone who looked closely or knew to look would see both young men. "This was 1887 South Carolina," Marcus said quietly. Post-Reconstruction Jim Crow laws spreading everywhere. Having a black teenager in a formal portrait with a white teenager would have been controversial, to say the least. Elena nodded. "So they hid him. But why include him at all? Why take the risk?" She pulled up the donation records from the Fletcher family. The photograph had been kept in the family for generations, passed down but never displayed prominently. A note from the donor, Elizabeth Fletcher Morrison, mentioned, "My great-great-grandfather's portrait." Family Story says there was something unusual about this photograph, but no one could remember what. Something unusual. That was putting it mildly. "We need to find out who this second young man was," Elena said. "And why he mattered enough to Daniel Fletcher to risk being in this photograph," Elena contacted the Charleston Historical Society and explained her discovery. Within hours, she was connected with Dr. Raymond Washington, a historian specializing in African American history in post-Reconstruction South Carolina. When she sent him the enhanced photograph, his response came within minutes. "I need to see the original. This is extraordinary." 2 weeks later, Elena and Marcus met Raymond at the Historical Society's research library. Raymond was in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He studied the enhanced photograph for several minutes in silence. "Daniel Fletcher," he said finally. "I know that name." His father, Thomas Fletcher, owned a dry goods store on King Street. Successful businessman, relatively progressive for the time, employed both white and black workers. Paid fair wages, didn't actively support the worst of the segregationist movements. He pulled out a city directory from 1887. Here Fletcher's Mercantile. And look at this notation. Carpentry work by Samuel Howard Freeman, established 1868. Samuel Howard, Elena repeated. Could he be the young man in the photograph? Raymond was already moving through census records. Samuel Howard appears in the 1880 census listed as a carpenter, age 31, with a wife, Marthy, and a son. Also named Samuel, age 9. By 1887, that would make young Samuel about 16. The same age as Daniel. Marcus found property records showing that the Howard family owned a small house on Cumming Street in a predominantly black neighborhood about a mile from the Fletcher home. They weren't enslaved then. They were free? Free, but not equal, Raymond said. By 1887, the brief hope of Reconstruction was dying. Black codes were being replaced by Jim Crow laws. Segregation was becoming entrenched. Voting rights were being stripped away through poll taxes and literacy tests. It was a dangerous time to be black in Charleston, and an even more dangerous time to have any kind of close association with white families outside of servitude. Elena studied the photograph again, focusing on Samuel's expression. He doesn't look subservient. He looks proud, defiant even, which makes this photograph even more remarkable, Raymond said. This wasn't a servant being included in his employer's portrait. This was something else entirely. Raymond dug deeper into city records, church registries, and newspaper archives. What he found painted a picture of two families whose lives had been intertwined for decades. Thomas Fletcher and Samuel Howard Sr. had known each other since before the Civil War, when Samuel had been enslaved on a plantation outside Charleston. After emancipation, Samuel had apprenticed as a carpenter and eventually established his own business. Thomas Fletcher had hired Samuel to do work on his store and home, and over time a professional respect had developed. When Daniel was born in 1871, and young Samuel in 1871 as well, just 3 months apart, the boys had played together as children. Raymond found a mention in a church newsletter from 1878. The Ladies' Auxiliary held a summer picnic for the children. Special note of thanks to Mrs. Fletcher and Mrs. Howard for organizing games that allowed all children to participate regardless of station. They were friends as children, Elena said. Before the full weight of segregation came down, more evidence emerged. A newspaper article from 1882 mentioned a youth reading group at the Fletcher home that included several colored children of good families. Daniel and Samuel were listed among the participants. But by 1885, such mentions disappeared. The political and social climate had shifted. South Carolina had implemented new laws restricting where black citizens could live, work, and socialize. Interracial gatherings, even educational ones, were increasingly viewed with suspicion and hostility. Raymond found a letter in the Historical Society's manuscript collection, written by Thomas Fletcher to a business associate in 1886. The times have grown cruel. My son asks me why his friend Samuel can no longer visit our home, why they cannot attend school together, why the world insists on seeing them as enemies when they see each other as brothers. I have no answer that satisfies either his heart or mine. Marcus read the letter over Raymond's shoulder. So they stayed friends but had to hide it. Not just hide it, Raymond said. Navigate it carefully. One wrong move, one public acknowledgement of their friendship, and both families could face serious consequences. Samuel's family could lose their business, their home. They could face violence. Elena looked at the photograph with new understanding. So when it came time for Daniel's 16th birthday portrait, he insisted Samuel be included. And his father allowed it, Raymond said. But only if it was done carefully. Hence the curtain, the partial concealment. Present but hidden. Acknowledged but deniable. Elena tracked down information about the photographer who'd taken the portrait. James Whitfield, who operated a studio on Meeting Street from 1880 to 1895. His business records had been donated to the Historical Society decades earlier, and Raymond helped Elena search through them. The entry for the Fletcher portrait was dated August 15, 1887. The notation was brief, but telling: D. Fletcher, formal portrait. Special arrangement per T. Fletcher. Payment in advance. Discretion assured. Discretion assured. Those two words confirmed what Elena suspected. The composition of the photograph had been deliberately planned, with everyone involved understanding the need for secrecy. She found Whitfield's personal journal in the manuscript collection. His entry from August 14, 1887, the day before the photograph was taken, revealed his internal struggle. Thomas Fletcher came to my studio today with an unusual request. His son wishes to have his portrait taken with his friend, a colored boy of the same age. I know both young men. Daniel has come to my studio before, and I've seen Samuel Howard around the city. They are good boys, both of them. But this is Charleston in 1887, not Philadelphia or Boston. What Fletcher asks could damage my business, could bring unwanted attention. Yet he offers double my normal fee and assures me the composition will be discreet. I agreed, God help me, because I remember a time before this hatred became law, and I hope to see such a time again. I will position young Samuel behind the drape, visible to those who look closely but not obvious to casual observers. It is a compromise that satisfies no one's conscience but perhaps preserves everyone's safety. Marcus read the passage aloud, his voice tight with emotion. He knew it was wrong to have to hide Samuel. But he also knew the danger of not hiding him. Raymond found newspaper articles from that same summer documenting racial violence in Charleston Black. Citizens attacked for perceived disrespect. Businesses burned. Families driven from their homes. This wasn't abstract danger, he said. This was real, immediate threat. And yet these families chose to take the risk, even if only in a small, hidden way. Elena studied Whitfield's technical notes about the photograph. He'd used careful lighting to ensure Samuel was visible, but not prominent. Had positioned the curtain precisely. Had even adjusted the exposure time to create subtle shadows that would further obscure Samuel's presence in the print. He was protecting them, Elena said softly. Every technical choice was designed to allow the friendship to be documented while minimizing the risk. Raymond's next discovery came from an unexpected source, a collection of personal letters found in the attic of a Charleston home being renovated. The letters, dated between 1885 and 1920, had been written between Daniel Fletcher and Samuel Howard, documenting a friendship that lasted decades despite the barriers placed between them. The earliest letters, from when both young men were 14 and 15, were innocent discussions of books they'd read, observations about the city, shared jokes. But even then, there were signs of the strained segregation placed on their relationship. Daniel, August 1885. Father says you cannot come to the house anymore. Mother cried when she told me. She says the world has gone mad, but we must live in the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. I don't understand why our friendship threatens anyone. We have done nothing wrong. Samuel, September 1885. My father explained to me that our friendship puts both our families at risk. There are men in this city who would hurt us for defying the natural order, as they call it. But there is nothing unnatural about two people caring for each other regardless of the color of their skin. I will always be your friend, Daniel, even if we must be so in secret. The letters continued through the years, delivered through trusted intermediaries, often Sarah, an older black woman who worked for the Fletcher family and had known both boys since childhood. The letters documented their struggles as they grew older and the walls between them grew higher. Daniel, March 1887. I turn 16 next month. Father is having a formal portrait made a tradition in our family. I told him I want you in the photograph with me. He thinks I'm mad, but Mother supports me. We are discussing how it might be done safely. Samuel, March 1887. I am honored that you would include me, but I fear the consequences. Not for myself. I would stand beside you proudly before the whole world if I could, but for our families. Your father's business, your family's standing, my family's safety. Is a photograph worth such risk? Daniel, April 1887. It is worth it because 30 years from now, when this cruel age has passed, I want there to be proof that we existed. That our friendship was real. That we refused, even in this small way, to let hatred erase what we built together. Raymond found a detailed account of the photograph session itself in a diary kept by Daniel's mother, Catherine Fletcher. Her entry from August 15th, 1887, provided a window into that day. Today was Daniel's portrait sitting, and what a day it was. Samuel arrived at the studio separately, entering through the back door as we'd arranged with Mr. Whitfield. My heart broke seeing these two fine young men forced to such secrecy simply for wanting to acknowledge their friendship. Daniel wore his new suit. He looked so handsome, so grown. Samuel wore his Sunday best, clothes his mother had carefully pressed. He carried himself with such dignity. When they saw each other in the studio, they embraced as brothers do, and I had to turn away to hide my tears. Mr. Whitfield arranged them carefully. Daniel in front, Samuel partially behind the curtain. If anyone asks, Whitfield said, I will say Samuel was there to help with equipment and happened to be caught in the frame. This explanation satisfied no one, but it provided the necessary fiction. The boys stood still for the long exposure, and I prayed the whole time that this small act of defiance would not bring harm to either family. When it was finished, Whitfield made 2 prints, one for our family, one for the Howards. Both families would have proof of what existed, even if the world refused to see it. Elena found corroboration in Whitfield's business records. 2 prints ordered, 2 prints delivered, both to different addresses. He'd charged the agreed-upon fee and noted in his private journal, May God protect these families for their courage. Marcus discovered something else in the Historical Society's archives. A receipt from a frame maker dated August 1887, commissioned by Thomas Fletcher. Custom frame with brass plate. Daniel Fletcher, 1887. Single name only per client request. He made sure only Daniel's name appeared on the frame, Marcus said. Another layer of protection. If anyone saw the photograph, they'd assume Samuel was just a studio assistant or servant who accidentally appeared in the background. Raymond nodded. Every detail was calculated to allow the friendship to exist, while providing plausible deniability if questioned. It was brilliant and heartbreaking at the same time. Elena looked at the restored photograph again, seeing it now not just as an artifact but as an act of resistance, a quiet, careful, dangerous declaration that friendship could transcend the artificial boundaries of race, even when expressing that friendship openly could cost everything. The correspondence between Daniel and Samuel continued well into adulthood, documenting how their lives diverged under the pressures of segregation while their friendship remained constant. Raymond pieced together their stories through census records, city directories, newspaper mentions, and the letters themselves. Daniel attended college in Virginia, studying business administration, and returned to Charleston in 1891 to work in his father's store. He married Elizabeth Hartwell in 1895, had 3 children, and eventually took over Fletcher's Mercantile when his father retired. His life followed the expected path of a white man of his class and era comfortable, respected, secure. Samuel's path was far more difficult. He'd wanted to attend college, but had been barred from white institutions and couldn't afford to travel to the few black colleges that existed. Instead, he learned the carpentry trade from his father, eventually taking over the family business. He married Grace Williams in 1893 and had 4 children. His business thrived despite the obstacles placed before black entrepreneurs, discriminatory lending practices, restricted access to supplies, customers who refused to pay fair prices. Their letters during this period revealed the strain of living parallel lives that could never publicly intersect. Daniel, 1892. I attended a business dinner last night where men I barely know called me friend and partner. Yet I cannot invite you, my actual friend and true brother, to sit at my table without causing scandal. The hypocrisy sickens me. Samuel, 1893. I am grateful for the life I have built, for Grace and our home and my father's legacy, but I will not pretend that it is equal to what you have, or that the barriers between us are anything but injustice made law. Still, your friendship remains one of the greatest gifts of my life. They met in secret, perhaps once or twice a year, always carefully, always briefly. Sometimes Daniel would commission carpentry work from Samuel, giving them an excuse to speak. Sometimes they would encounter each other by chance at specific locations at specific times, arranged through coded messages in their letters. The photograph remained hidden in both families, brought out only in private, a tangible reminder of a friendship that the world insisted could not exist. Raymond found evidence that Daniel had secretly helped Samuel's business on several occasions, recommending him to clients, providing supplies at cost, once even posting bail when Samuel was falsely arrested for vagrancy, a common charge used to harass black citizens. The correspondence between Daniel and Samuel spanned 35 years, ending only with Samuel's death in 1922. The final years of their friendship were documented in letters that revealed both the endurance of their bond and the toll that decades of enforced separation had taken. Samuel, 1918, "We are old men now, Daniel. I am 47 and feel ancient. My hands ache from decades of carpentry, but more than that, my heart aches from decades of pretending we are not brothers. How many meals have we not shared? How many moments of joy and sorrow have we experienced separately when we should have stood together? I love you no less than the day we posed for that photograph, but I confess I am tired of the hiding. Daniel, 1919, I am tired too, my friend." Last week, my son asked me who my closest friend was. I told him it was Robert Harrison from the Business Association, a man I barely tolerate. I could not tell him the truth that my dearest friend is a man he has never met, whose name I cannot speak in public, whose presence at my dinner table would destroy my reputation. What kind of coward does that make me? You have endured far worse than I, yet I am the one who benefited from the injustice that keeps us apart. Raymond found Daniel's diary from this period, where he wrote more openly about his feelings. I have lived a life of comfort built on moral compromise. I have accepted a world that tells me Samuel is inferior when I know him to be my equal in every way that matters. I have prospered while he struggled. I have remained silent when I should have spoken. When history judges my generation how will we explain ourselves? The final letter in the collection was written by Daniel to Samuel in October 1922, shortly before Samuel's death from pneumonia. My dearest friend, I received word that you are gravely ill. I want to come to you, to sit by your bedside as a brother should, but we both know I cannot. Even now, even at the end, the world will not allow us the dignity of public friendship. I am sending this letter with Sarah, who has carried our words between us for 37 years. Please know that you have been the truest friend I have ever known. That photograph we took so many years ago, I look at it sometimes and remember when we were young and believed friendship could conquer hatred. Perhaps we were naive. Or perhaps we were simply ahead of our time. Be at peace, brother of my heart. Samuel died on November 3, 1922. Daniel attended the funeral, but stood at a distance, another white business owner paying respects to a skilled tradesman. Only Sarah, now elderly herself, knew that the tears on Daniel's face were not for a business associate but for a brother. In April 2024, Elena organized a public presentation of her findings at the Smithsonian. The restored photograph was displayed on a large screen side by side with the original deteriorated version, dramatically showing how Samuel had been hidden for 137 years. Raymond had tracked down living descendants of both families. From Daniel's line came Thomas Fletcher Anderson, a retired teacher from Charleston. From Samuel's line came Monica Howard Williams, a civil rights attorney from Atlanta, and her brother James. When Elena revealed the restored photograph showing both young men, Monica gasped audibly. "That's our great-great-grandfather," she whispered, pointing to Samuel. We have old family stories about a friendship with a white family, but no one knew details. We certainly never knew there was a photograph. Thomas Anderson stared at the image of his great-great-grandfather standing with Samuel. Our family never mentioned this. The photograph has been in our attic for generations, but no one ever looked closely enough to see him. He turned to Monica. "I am so sorry. Sorry he was hidden. Sorry the friendship had to be secret. Sorry for all of it." Monica took his hand. Our ancestors found a way to preserve their friendship despite impossible circumstances. They took a risk to leave us this proof. Maybe that's the real legacy, not the hiding, but the refusal to let hatred completely erase what they built together. Elena shared the letters, the diaries, the documentation of a friendship that spanned decades in defiance of segregation. The presentation went viral online, the restored photograph and the story behind it resonating. with millions who saw in it both the cruelty of the past and the enduring power of human connection. The Smithsonian acquired the photograph for permanent display, along with selections from the correspondence. But copies were made for both families, properly restored, with both young men fully visible, standing together as they'd wanted to be seen. At the donation ceremony, James Howard Williams spoke, "For 137 years, my great-great-grandfather was hidden in this photograph. But he was there the whole time, patient, dignified, waiting to be seen." That's the story of Black Americans, always present, always contributing, always part of the story, even when others tried to write us out of it. This photograph proves we cannot be erased. Thomas Anderson stood beside him. And it proves that some people, even in the darkest times, chose love over hatred, friendship over fear. Our great-great-grandfathers were brave not with the courage of grand gestures, but with the courage of small, persistent acts of defiance. They left us this photograph as evidence that another way was possible, even when the world made it nearly impossible. The restored image, two young men, one white, one black, standing together in 1887, Charleston became a symbol of resistance against hatred. A reminder that friendship transcends the artificial boundaries society creates. What had been hidden for over a century was finally visible. Proof that even in the most oppressive times, humanity can break through, one small act of courage at a time. The photograph that experts had cleaned up didn't just reveal a hidden figure, it revealed a hidden truth about the resilience of human connection. The cost of injustice, and the quiet revolutionaries who refused to let hatred define their world.